Hey, what's up, everybody? Listen, grief, it's not just emotions, it's not just sadness. Grief is trauma. And in today's episode, we'll explore how grief can trap you mentally, emotionally, and even spiritually. We'll talk about how unprocessed grief can manifest itself in relationships, it can manifest itself in your routines, and even in your faith. But most importantly, we're going to talk about how to start the healing process. So do me a favor, take a deep breath, and join me in the cave. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Live from the Cave. My name is Brian Crenshaw, and this is a space where real people tackle real life issues, where we're pursuing the truth, through healing, and finding our purpose. I want you to buckle up tonight because this first episode, we're going to dive into something that hits home for all of us, and that something is grief. And we're not just going to talk about grief, we're going to talk about the trauma that comes with grief. But before we do that, I want you to do something for me. I want you to like, I want you to share, and I want you to subscribe. I want you to like, I want you to share, and I want you to subscribe. I want you to do those things because I want you to share this with somebody that may be dealing with something traumatic, somebody that's trying to navigate a hard space. Maybe they need to hear this. And I want you to subscribe because everybody needs community. Everybody needs someone that they can count on, someone that they can depend on. And I want you to be a part of my community. So I want to be able to help you, and I want you to be able to help me. So yeah, go ahead and like, share, subscribe, and even in the comments, let me know where you're watching from. Let me know who you are, where you're watching from. And if you want to, you can definitely share some nuggets, share some stories. This is a very informal platform. It's a safe space. It's a safe space for us all to heal, for us all to grow, and ultimately to develop and discover. But I want you to understand that you're not alone. You're not by yourself. Even in the darkest of moments, you're not by yourself. So definitely, if you want to put something in the comments, tell me where you're watching from. I would love to dialogue with you. I would love to hear about your story if you're willing to share. But I want to jump in tonight talking about grief. And not only are we talking about grief, like I said, we're talking about the trauma that comes with grief. Now, throughout the course of this, you're going to hear some things that may be triggering. You're going to hear some things that may put you in your feels. Guess what? It's okay. We're all navigating. So I want you to do me a favor. I want you to grab a notebook, maybe grab your iPad, grab a pen, whatever you need to do to jot some things down that's going to help you as you manage this traumatic thing called grief. Now, we're going to start by defining grief. Like, what is grief? We're going to define grief, and also we're going to define trauma. Now, this is live from the cave. Live. I mean, no edits, no nothing. This is straight live. Me and you, we having a dialogue. So, what is grief? Grief is the emotional suffering you feel when we lose someone or something meaningful. It's a natural response. It's a natural emotional response to, when we lose someone or something meaningful. But what is trauma? Trauma is the wound that grief can leave behind when it's left untreated. If you're taking notes, trauma is the wound that grief can leave behind when it's left untreated. But you might ask me, how do they work together? When grief and trauma meet, it becomes lingering trauma. When you have unprocessed grief, it becomes lingering trauma. And there's a difference between normal grieving and when you're trapped in grief or trapped in the trauma of grief. What does it mean to be trapped in the trauma of grief? When you're trapped in it, it manipulates everything about you. It controls what you say, it controls how you feel, it controls what you think, it controls who you love, who you decide not to love, who you open up to, who you don't, who you shut yourself off from. Being trapped in grief or the trauma of grief has a tendency to put your life in a cycle of falsehoods. It puts your life in a cycle of viewing life through a lens that's false. So that's how they work together. Now, I want you to understand, and I said it before, grief is a natural response to loss. But the trauma of it comes when the grief or the emotions become overwhelming and you can't deal or you can't manage. But let me help you because grief is often misunderstood. Most people think that grief is just crying or grief is just sadness when someone dies. While that is true, you can grieve relationships, you can grieve missed opportunities, you can grieve childhood that you missed, you can grieve futures that you hope for or dreams or goals that you lost. There's so many different types of grief. And sometimes grief is a silent storm. Sometimes grief sneaks up on you at the worst of moments. We've conditioned ourselves to laugh and smile in public while we're broken in private. We've shown up the best way we could in front of people while we're broken on the inside. That's or unmanaged grief that turns into trauma. Trauma happens when grief breaks something on the inside of you and it feels like there's no space or support for you to process it. And it almost feels like um, everything stops in that moment. You can't function, you can't do anything, but time doesn't stop. You often ask yourself, how do you get past the traumatic experience of losing a loved one when work doesn't stop or life doesn't stop? You still have to provide for your children, you still have to show up the best self at work, but you're grieving. That's trauma. When it feels like the pain of it will not go away and life doesn't stop. Now, I know for me, like I said, this is very informal and this is very open and honest and vulnerable. I know for me, like 2 years ago, I lost my grandmother. And shortly after that, I lost my aunt. And not only was I not properly grieving the loss of my grandmother, I realized that even with the loss of loved ones, I was still grieving the loss of personality or the loss of identity. I was grieving the fact that I had lost a version of myself that I didn't realize that I lost. And when I realized that, I was asking myself, why do I feel so disconnected from life? Why do I feel so unmotivated? Why do I feel so lazy? I don't feel like producing anything. I feel like God is the furthest thing from me. What am I supposed to do with this? And then I realized that I was not managing the fact that I was grieving, and it became traumatic. Every song reminded me of what I lost. Every noise reminded me of what I lost. I couldn't drink Pepsis for the longest time because it reminded me of my aunt. Every time I would go out to do yard work, I would think of my grandmother. I would think of my grandfather. And it was triggering because I never processed the fact that I was grieving. And it was almost out of sight, out of mind. I remember feeling like I was stuck physically, emotionally, and spiritually. I was just stuck. I realized that I had lost something or someone that meant so much to me, and I didn't know how to process it. So I want to talk about some things that will help you understand whether or not you are or have been trapped in trauma. Sometimes being trapped in trauma is emotional. Sometimes it looks like guilt or shame or isolation just lingering over you. You feel this heavy feeling of shame. You feel this heavy feeling of guilt, like everything is your fault. You feel like you don't want to be bothered with people. It's this moment where you feel cut off from the world. That's emotional, being emotionally trapped. Sometimes you're mentally trapped. Things like anxiety or depression or numbness, those are signs that you are mentally trapped in trauma. And even you can be spiritually trapped in trauma. What does being spiritually trapped in trauma look like? Things like questioning your faith. You're questioning the existence of God. You're wondering if he hears you. You're wondering if he's still there. You're feeling abandoned. You're feeling lost. You're feeling no sense of purpose. Those are things that tell you that you are spiritually trapped in trauma. And when you are trapped in trauma, it makes you look at life through a lens that's very unproductive. Now, I want you to do me a favor and I want you to ask yourself 3 questions. If you can write these questions down. The first question is, have you ever felt guilty for how you grieve? Have you ever felt guilty for how you grieve? Question number 2, have you ever shut down because you didn't want to burden anyone with your grief? Have you ever shut down because you didn't want to burden anybody with your grief? Question number 3, have you ever wondered where God was in the midst of your pain or in the midst of your grief? Have you ever found yourself in a moment like, I know this is grief, but I don't feel God. I don't feel his presence. I don't hear him speaking. God, where are you? Have you ever had that? And I want you to reflect on those questions because sometimes grief will tell you lies. Grief has a tendency to lie to you. Grief will tell you, one, that it's all your fault. Grief will tell you that what you're experiencing, what you're dealing with, what you lost somehow was your fault. You're always talking about losing someone. But what about that dream that you lost? Or what about that goal that fell to the ground? Grief will have you thinking that it was your fault. You could have done something different. You're not enough to achieve the dream. You don't have what it takes to achieve that goal. That's a lie that grief will tell you. Another lie that grief will tell you is that your life will never be the same again. Many people talk about when someone dies or someone passes away, that it leaves a void in their life. And that's very true. It does. It leaves a very empty space. But if you don't manage grief, the trauma of it will tell you that there's no other person in the world that will ever fill that void, that your life will never be the same. There's no restoration, there's no fix. You're just going to be broken forever because the person that filled that void is now gone. That's a lie that grief will tell you. Grief will lie to you and make it hard for you to trust. You won't let anybody in. You won't talk to anybody. You won't emotionally connect with anybody. You will be afraid to love because grief or the trauma of grief will tell you that it's impossible to love again. And here is the biggest lie that grief will tell you. And this is something that I had to navigate through myself. And that big lie is that God doesn't care. Sometimes we're so focused on how things feel to us that we're not focused or hypersensitive on how it works for us. I'll say that again. A lot of times we're hyper focused on how things feel to us that we don't focus on how good it's working for us. The Bible tells us in Romans 8:28, for we know that all things work together for the good of them who love God and who are the called according to his purpose. And we're hyper focused on it feeling good and not working for our good. So in moments of grief, grief will lie to you and tell you that God doesn't care because it doesn't feel good. But just as grief can lie to you, there are some things that you can do to combat those lies. There's a scripture that I lean on quite often when grief starts to creep up. And that's Psalms 34:18, where it talks about God being close to the brokenhearted. In the moments where you feel the loneliest, in the moment where you feel like no one cares, in the moments where you feel like nobody understands, that's a scripture you can use. And then you have to normalize your emotions, normalize your grief. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to, cry. It's okay to let your emotions go. Jesus himself was emotional. We see several times where Jesus expressed his emotions. One of the shortest scriptures, or the shortest scripture in the Bible, Jesus wept. And we always joke and say, well, why did he weep? The truth behind why he wept was he was grieving. He was grieved. So it's okay to normalize being emotional. It's perfectly fine. I hope you're understanding this. Once you understand that you have the tools to combat the lies that grief tells you, you can then start working on the steps it takes to heal. What is one step that it's going to take to heal? The first step is acknowledging it. Acknowledge the loss. Acknowledge the loss and then give yourself permission to feel. Acknowledge the fact that it meant something to you, that they meant something to you, that they meant the world to you. They had a great impact on your life. Acknowledge it. It's okay. But then you have to give yourself permission to feel. Give yourself permission to not have a good day. Give yourself permission to be weak. Give yourself permission. Give yourself a moment. It's okay. And while you're giving yourself permission to feel, give yourself grace to grow. That's step number one. Step number two, you have to get to a space where you can say their name. I know a lot of times we think of being out of sight, out of mind, and we're afraid to bring them up because it's almost like if I say their name, it's going to bring back a flood of emotions. If I bring up the incident, it's going to bring back a flood of emotions. But I want to encourage you to don't be afraid to remember. Don't be afraid to remember the good moments. Don't be afraid to remember the impact or the influence or the words that stuck with you. Don't be afraid to remember. And when those feelings come up, embrace them. Embrace them with humility, understanding that God saw value enough in you to place them in your life. Don't allow them to manage you. The thing about grief is, if it goes unmanaged, it has the potential to manage you. So when those emotions come up, learn to manage them, learn to compartmentalize them, put them in their proper space. Don't allow them to manage you and feed you lies. Here's another step. Try journaling. Journal your emotions. A lot of times we feel like we have to be so strong, we have to be so well put together. And what we do is, because we don't express, we bottle all of those things up. And just like a volcano, once it reaches a certain space or point in time, it has to erupt. And that's what happens with a lot of us. Grief bottles up, grief builds up in our life, and eventually it explodes in things that look like anger. It explodes in things that look like emotional instability. But what you can do to manage that is journal. Get the pain out of your heart, get the pain out of your head, write it down. I tell people all the time, I wrote the book Managing a Damaged Destiny from a very damaged place. I wrote that book getting those emotions out, trying to figure out how am I going to manage this destiny in such a damaged state. So journal your emotions. Step 4 would be you gotta be okay with letting people in. I know sometimes grief can make it hard for you to trust people or hard for you to believe that people really care. But there's a community of people who want to see you grow. There's a community of people who want to see you succeed and who want to see you whole. So don't be afraid to let people in. People will hold you accountable, but people won't be frustrated that you're dealing with emotions. People won't be so judgmental that you're having a moment. You got to let the right people in. Speak to a therapist, speak to a counselor, speak to a support group. Find you a community of people who understand what it feels like to grieve, to lose something, to lose someone, to lose themselves. Speak to people who understand what it feels like. And while you're letting people in, do your best and really work hard to let God in. This is what I learned about grief. Grief is not always meant to be fixed. Grief sometimes is meant to be felt. Sometimes you gotta let grief ride, you gotta ride the wave of grief. But it's safer to be felt in the presence of God. Why? Because God is not moved by your emotions. God is not moved by your tears. God is not moved by your emotional instability. He's well acquainted with grief. So he's not going to judge you. He's not going to treat you different. He's not going to withhold himself from you because you're grieving. Your grief, your pain, your suffering, it's safe with him. So invite God in. Invite God into your grief. Prayer, worship, find a space of seclusion where you can really hone in on what God is trying to do with you in the midst of this. Again, it may not feel good to you, but it's working for you. So I want to let you know, as we're coming to a close, I want to let you know and I want to encourage you that one, you are not alone. You are not alone. Okay? And I also want you to understand that healing takes time. No one is rushing you to be okay. No one is rushing you through this process. No one is rushing you for you to be a version of yourself that you're not ready to be. You are allowed to grieve. You are allowed to have a moment. You are allowed to miss something. You're allowed to miss that person. You're allowed to miss that job. You're allowed to miss that opportunity. Don't allow anyone to tell you that grieving is bad. Grieving becomes bad when it's unmanaged. Okay? I want you to really walk away from this knowing that we're in this together. We're going to navigate and walk this healing journey together. Everybody is navigating something. Everybody is navigating some form of grief. And it's going to take everybody together walking this thing out. You are not alone. I say this all the time, and I want you to know that regardless of what it may have done to you, regardless of how it made you feel, I want you to understand that you matter. What you have, it matters. What you're trying to produce, it matters. Who you're trying to become, it matters. And don't let the trauma stop you from believing that. Don't allow being trapped in a traumatic state stop you from producing. Someone is waiting for you to produce. Someone is waiting for you to overcome. Someone is waiting for you to become. So as we close tonight, I want you to know that you're loved, you're considered, you're valued, and most importantly, you matter. If you have not done so already, I want you to like, share, and subscribe. We're going to walk this healing journey together. So I'm going to be back here next week, same time, same place. Thank you, thank you, thank you for joining me live in the cave. We just tackled how to manage the trauma of grief. Until next week, love you guys. See you next week.